Welcome to the Peter Legge podcast, where you're empowered to lead, inspire, and influence. Now, here's your host and mentor, best-selling author, internationally acclaimed speaker, and community leader, Dr. Peter Legge.
Welcome to Fridays with Seniors. My guests are Sara from Seniors First BC and Leanore Sali from Seniors Service Society of BC. Welcome, ladies. It's good to have you here.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Our topic today is elder abuse, awareness, and prevention. And we have a short video that highlights exactly what we want to talk about.
Thank you, Peter. I brought this video along. It's compliments of the BC Community Response Network and It's Not Right program. The It's Not Right program is a program that's offered through the BC Community Response Networks, and it educates people about elder abuse, the signs of elder abuse, and how to help. They have produced a series of videos that illustrate the types of abuse and neglect that exist in community. And this is one of those videos, and it's called Moving In.
Are you sure you're going to be comfortable in the basement?
Yeah, there's plenty of room, Mom. Besides, your granddaughter will never be home. You're a lifesaver, Mom. I don't know what I would have done without you.
I'm sure you're going to find another job in no time.
You mind if I watch a movie? By the way, your bank card was rejected at the gas station today. It was really embarrassing.
What are you talking about?
I went to fill up my car and it wouldn't go through. It must be overdrawn or something. You better hope your check comes in this week and you're not gonna be able to get your prescriptions refilled.
What are you doing?
I can't get used to the damp downstairs.
Oh, try another blanket, Mom. We're boiling up here.
You know, I would have wished you would have asked me before you moved me into the basement.
Why? Do you have to be on my back, Mom? It's too dark and dingy down there. I get depressed, you know that. Complete your puzzles down there as well as you can up here.
What's for dinner, Grams? I'm starving.
So tell me, ladies, what's your initial response reaction to that video?
Certainly the first time I saw it, Peter, I found it very hard to watch. Very difficult to watch. You see the signs of the elder abuse that's going on there, certainly financial abuse. The son's come into the home. He's taken over the home. He's basically, relegated his mother to the basement. It's emotional abuse. The fact that he's counting on her love for him and using that in order to exploit her.
Okay.
Yeah, it certainly rings true with a lot of the situations that I've seen and I've heard about. And this type of elder abuse is really insidious because it doesn't initially feel wrong and it sneaks up on you. It comes on quietly. And also it's a family member, which is very common. And oftentimes the older adult doesn't want to report this or tell other people because they love these people and they care about them. And that makes it harder to address the abuse in that situation.
So the actual incident we saw is private and confidential. How would you get a hold of it? How would your officers be aware of this? And once you did, what could you do about it?
We would probably get a call in an instance like that, Peter, if the mother is not willing to report it. Most likely we would get a call from a close friend that would contact us. and say that this is happening and what can we do. Obviously, the mother has to be willing to report.
Yeah, we would similarly probably get a call through our seniors abuse and information line. It could be from the mother, it could be from, say, a neighbor or another family member who's concerned, and they want to know what can be done, how they can help this person or how she can get help. And then our office would try to give resources and information on where we can go. If there's a legal matter, it can be referred to the legal clinic that we run for legal assistance. Say if the son had a power of attorney, then and the mother is capable, we could potentially assist with trying to get that changed.
How many times in a week would you get calls such as this?
Quite a bit. I know from our sale line, we in a 1 year period, we got 2,357 calls about abuse, and that's about 37% of our calls. So we're definitely getting multiple calls like this a week, and most of them are about financial or emotional abuse, which is what we're seeing in that video.
So how exactly do you deal with it though?
I guess it depends entirely on the willingness of the mother in this situation to address it. We would, again, if it came to us, we would probably report it to SAIL, or their friend would. I think what's really important here as well is that if you are a friend and you know that this is going on, or you're suspecting that this is going on, how you approach the individual, the victim, how you approach them, how you talk to them, making them, yeah, you can't be judgmental. You have to be very careful and offer your support and your concern for them. And once they feel that, maybe they're more willing to open up and actually address the situation, knowing that they have your support. I mean, serious in a situation like this, and Sarah, you can confirm, mainly older adults, they're embarrassed. They may be afraid, they're ashamed that this is happening to them. And it's very, very difficult for them to report or talk about it.
Sarah, tell me a little about the type of elder abuse situations you hear about most of the time in your role.
Through the seniors abuse information line, we do hear most about financial and emotional abuse. Over half the calls involve one or both of these. We do hear a bit about neglect or physical abuse, but those aren't called in quite as often. The majority of calls are related to a family member. So in about 62% of the abuse calls from our office, the abuser was a family member. And we do get self-neglect calls as well. And these are often about unsafe or hazardous living conditions, like someone who's hoarding or something like that. We also do deal with abuse through our elder law clinic, offering representation or summary advice. 17% of our files over the past year were about financial abuse. So that's the most common one. We see stuff like someone abusing a power of attorney or representation agreement or a joint bank account. For example, a good illustration of the type of call we get, say an older adult reported their money was stolen by their daughter. The daughter had convinced the older adult to set up a joint bank account due to the older adult's language barrier. And then the daughter took the money out of the account, and the older adult called the police, but they were told to call a lawyer for legal assistance. So they phoned us since we have the legal clinic. And these cases are tough because once you put a person's name on the joint bank account, they own all the money, so they can drain it legally if they want because they're an owner as well.
So how do you prevent it? You get involved while it's being undertaken. Is there any way you can prevent it before it even starts?
There are some ways to deal with monetary things like that. Joint bank accounts are really tricky because, like I said, the person whose name is on it is the sole owner. So when we're talking to clients beforehand, that's why advanced planning is important. You can set up powers of attorney or representation agreements, and there's more checks and balances with these. The attorney's name is not on the account. They're just a person who's authorized to help. So they have legal responsibilities to account for the money and things like that. And you can remove them as a power of attorney if they're abusing it. If the older adult is still capable, we will sometimes get people coming to us saying, this person is misusing my money, I want to remove the power of attorney. And if they're capable, they can revoke it. If they're not capable, the older adult, you can't necessarily revoke the power of attorney, But what we would likely do in that case was refer them to the PGT. The PGT and the designated agencies can investigate abuse and neglect situations if the older adult is not capable of seeking support and assistance. And the PGT can investigate misuse of a power of attorney, and then the PGT can apply to the court to get the power of attorney removed. And they can potentially ask the court to set up a comiteeship to appoint someone to help the older adult with money or personal care decisions for a person who's safer and won't misuse that. But a lot can be done ahead of time through advanced planning to choose this person I trust. I know they won't misuse my money. I'll appoint them as my attorney or my representative. So that planning ahead is really important.
So based on the conversations you've had with clients, who are the perpetrators of this abuse in the main?
Usually a family member. It's most commonly, at least from what we hear, an adult child or a spouse.
Yes, from our perspective, most often it's a family member. It can be an adult child or grandchildren, nieces, nephews. Sometimes it's both, say, the daughter and son-in-law or son and daughter-in-law that are abusing. Often we see a case arise when the mother will come in, move into the home. They're paying rent. They maybe have a suite. Sometimes they actually offer to pay, and they may have paid for a third of the home, and they're there and they're babysitting. They're babysitting the grandchildren, taking care of the grandchildren. And then what happens is the grandchildren get older. The parents don't want them there anymore, so they gradually, through emotional abuse and exclude them from family events, etc., so that it comes to a point where they don't feel welcome there anymore, and all they really want to do is move. And in most cases where we've seen, even when they moved and found their own housing, they don't try to get their investment back if they've invested in their children's home. We have a situation right now that we're working with, and we got a call from a transition house, and the woman is there. She was being abused by her daughter and her son-in-law, and financial abuse and emotional and also physical abuse. They had taken her ID. They had taken her bank card. They were using her bank, her funds. And she actually ended up in hospital because she needed some blood tests. And while she was in hospital, she spoke to somebody there. And the daughter had convinced her that she wasn't capable of managing her own affairs anymore, and she needed to manage all the money for her. And they did cognitive tests and found out that she was totally capable. She's completely fine. She has no signs of dementia or Alzheimer's. And she didn't want to go back home because of the abuse. So they put her in a transition home, and they contacted us. The way they got her information back from her daughter and son-in-law is they arranged for a police escort to go to their home. They got the ID back, got her bank information back. And so now we are able to help her find housing where she will be safe. So those are some of the kinds of calls and situations that we come across.
What type of help and resources are there for seniors who are experiencing this kind of abuse?
And, you know, depending if it's what type of abuse, right? If it's financial, certainly if we get calls where the senior is calling us, we will often refer them to seniors first. We will also, if it's financial, it's the guardian and trustee. They can also go to, there is the community response networks. We are a community response network for New Westminster. They will call us, and again, what we will do is refer them to other sources. It could be a designated agency. We do get calls frequently, actually, from friends or neighbors that are concerned about somebody. And generally with those calls, we will send them to a designated agency, which would be Fraser Health or Coastal Health, and they report it. And then they're obligated, if I'm correct, Sarah, I think, to look into it, check into it, and check out the situation.
That's correct. In BC, our Adult Guardianship Act, it sets out the protections for adults here in BC, we don't have mandatory reporting. We don't force people to report, but if a report is made to a designated agency, the designated agency is obligated to investigate and respond to that. Yeah, there's a variety of options for an adult who's experiencing abuse. The first question to start with is always, is the adult capable? If a person is capable, they have the right to make decisions about their life. They have a right to choose to live at risk, just like any of us do. So we can't force them out. A designated agency can only come into play when the adult is not capable of seeking support and assistance, and they're experiencing abuse, neglect, and self-neglect. In that case, they can investigate and potentially provide some support and assistance through some court orders to get the adult some help that they may need. But they can only step in when the adult's not capable. But anyone can report, so a concerned friend or neighbor, a person who works at the bank who has a reason to be concerned, anyone can phone a designated agency and they have to look into that. It's not an emergency response. There are some waits for them to get in, like most things in the healthcare system. There are some delays with him getting out there. So if a person is in immediate risk of harm, like there's some imminent physical risk, that's not necessarily the first place to call. That would be the police if they're saying imminent risk or ongoing physical abuse happening, just because the designated agency can't get out there right away. But the first thing to consider is what the adult wants. If they're capable, ask them what they want. Most older adults, we find, don't want to call the police because they don't want their abuser to be prosecuted because it's their child, it's their grandchild, their spouse. But there are a lot of other options relating to the police. Are things like you can get victim services if it's something that may be a crime to help them, and they can offer support. Or if they're going through the criminal justice system, you can get people to help you navigate that. There's also protection order or peace bond, like Leanore was talking about. That's something you can get that would help you with, say, getting your things back. You can, if you get a protection order or a peace bond, you can get the police to help you get your things. You can keep them away from you. It gives you a lot of protections from that way. And it doesn't need to be a crime. There are a lot of stuff that's not a crime, but it's elder abuse and it's wrong. You don't need that to get a protection order. It doesn't have to be your spouse. They've really expanded the definition of it. So it can be a grandchild, a child, someone living with you. There's a lot more options now. There are those community services that can help you with things like getting financial stability. People can help you, say, apply for government benefits, get housing, get home care. Often a person in an abusive situation is reliant on their abuser to care for them and to give them housing or food. So it can help to get those things to get them away. So that's calling places like SAIL, our line, or the BCCRNs, among others. And if there's the abuser holding a POA or a representation agreement, a lawyer can help get this revoked if capable, or if not capable, then you could go to the PGT to potentially get that revoked and get a committeeship. Another family member could also apply to the court to get a committeeship if the person is not capable and someone's holding a POA or an RA, or just doesn't have anything. They can potentially get appointed a committee. It takes some time, but if the adult's not capable, that's your only option to go through that route. There's also people can get help with making safety plans. So if they choose to leave in the future, that's an important thing a family or friend can do that's concerned, to say, if you were to leave, what can we do? What can we set up? How are you going to go? Since we know that's a high risk time when you're leaving. So this is just some of the options, but there are lots out there.
I think also it's Peter. Oh, sorry to interrupt. I think what's also really important is that not all the calls that we get where there's a situation of abuse are intentional or malice. I mean, we often get calls from family members and they found themselves in a situation where suddenly they're a caregiver and they've got all their own responsibilities. They're caregiving for their own family and they're overwhelmed by the situation or burned out. And so they may be neglecting, or there may be abuse that they don't even think of or aware of as abuse. And I think it's really important that we understand that as well. And there is support out there for caregivers, and it's important that they know where they can go. The BC Caregivers Association is phenomenal. They have lots of resources. So if you are a caregiver and you as I say, find yourself in this situation where you're not sure what to do or where to go, and there are lots of support systems out there. So I think it's really important that not all abuse is intentional or deliberate.
There's also some people, the abuser may be experiencing addiction issues, things like that. So sometimes the advice can be to find help for that person to overcome their addictions, or help finding jobs, things like that.
So when would you recommend a senior who might be experiencing some of this abuse, when do they contact the police?
If there's an immediate danger of physical harm, say they are being physically abused, then you would want to call 911. And if the abuse is considered a crime, or there is a risk in the future of physical harm, then you could call the non-emergency line. And this is an option for any crime, not just physical abuse. So like financial abuse, you can call. The police are just one part of this, but their role is to investigate a potential criminal offense and address safety issues. Some detachments even have a specialized elder abuse or domestic violence units. The elder abuse units are not super common, but there are some that can help. And the police would recommend charges to the prosecutor. In BC, the prosecutors lay the charges. And the police could also point someone in the direction of how to get, say, a protection order, a peace bond, or make referrals. So there are some stuff. It's important to consider that not everything is a crime, though. So you would call the police if there was a potential crime. There is no crime of elder abuse in BC. Our crimes are age neutral in Canada, with the exception of some offenses related to children. But there are crimes that would apply to elder abuse, such as assault, theft, harassment, sexual assault. There's even an offense called theft by a person holding a power of attorney, negligence. So those cases, if the adult wants the criminal justice system involved, you could call the police. But not everything that's wrong for elder abuse is a crime. This kind of things include things like humiliating, gaslighting, making someone babysit grandchildren for free, housing takeover, things like that. So these aren't crimes, so the police can't actually help with those. They would just come in and likely make referrals to other places like designated agency or SAIL.
Is there anything that the audience that is viewing this can do to help a senior or even prevent elder abuse?
Well, I think certainly talk to them, ask them how they are. If you suspect that something that is wrong or happening, let them know that you're concerned about them. Listen to them. Often I think what happens is an older adult is, if they report abuse, it's not believed, and they're afraid that they won't be believed. So, and make sure you do this in a safe environment. I think one of the really, really key things is education, finding out, learning how to recognize elder abuse, learn the signs of elder abuse. And that is a long way to prevention. I had a call just a couple of weeks ago from a gentleman, and he was concerned about his mother. And she is actually living with a very close friend. Her husband died and her friend's spouse died, and they had been friends for a long time. So they decided to live together just for support and companionship. And there's no relationship other than just friendship with them. They're both in their early 80s. And the son noticed that his mother was starting to decline somewhat, a little bit of memory loss. And the friend was becoming a caregiver. And he could tell that there was starting to get cracks in that relationship, where there was pressure and strain on it, simply because he couldn't cope with it. And so he reached out to us and said, look, I see this is happening. I want to help them. I want to help both of them because I care for both of them. And I'd like to put a plan together for them. Where do I go? Where do I find the resources? How do I go about this? And by recognizing those signs immediately, he's prevented, which would probably have ended up in some kind of abuse. It's prevented that. So I think it's really important to recognize those signs and then learn where the resources are in your community, so that if they're asking for help and reaching out for help, you know where to send them, you know the resources to give them, and be there with them, right? And probably most of all is, I think, we have to end the silence. We need to talk about this. We need to have conversations. And I think it's again, the community response networks, there's about 87 of them throughout the province. They do this education and training, and they can come in and do a workshop with your staff, with your community organizations, with your church organizations, and educate them on how to recognize it and where to go and how to get help. But that's really, I mean, we do really have to start the conversation.
It also flourishes in isolation, abuse does. That's why COVID was so difficult. You didn't have home care workers coming in, you didn't have people going to the bank. These might be the only social connections someone has who's being abused, because abusers often isolate the person. And so it's not seen, it's not reported. So trying to keep those social connections can be very important to either prevent or facilitate reporting of abuse.
I'm just talking to the two of you. How many people are in your office that are able to put their hands to the wheel on this thing when there's an issue?
We have probably about 8 to 10 people who work on our sale line who will get the information from the older adult. They can give them referrals, make those connections. We have one victim service worker that can help an older adult who is potentially experiencing some crimes. And then we also have our legal staff. So there are 5 lawyers right now who will do elder abuse files and different advanced planning stuff like that. And then we have some legal advocates, but they don't usually deal with abuse situations. They deal more with housing and debt issues.
And yeah,
then we also
do, sorry, yeah, we will, I mean, if it's a situation where they're needing housing and support with that, that's where we can come in, and that's what we do. We have our housing navigators, we have our outreach workers, and make it a priority if somebody is in an abusive situation to get them out of that housing and get them into a safe place. And work with other community organizations such as transition houses or safe houses or places like that as well, or organizations like Seniors First, etc. Right?
Yeah, and those housing navigators are really important. I know in my past work, I found that there's not a lot of good options for housing for seniors, especially like transition homes. There's only one that's meant for seniors. It's very hard to find appropriate places, and there's such long wait lists for government subsidized housing. So it can be really difficult, and there's not a good network for people leaving the hospital to find a safe place to go. So they often will end up in long-term care or stay in the hospital for a long time looking for that. It's a big gap right now.
I might be mistaken here, I'm not sure I am, but there is no minister for seniors housing in this province. Is that correct? Or have I missed, am I incorrect there?
I can't recall one.
No.
No.
There's no minister for seniors either.
Should there be?
There's a seniors advocate, but not a minister.
And should there be?
We did have a minister. It's not created, it doesn't have its own ministry, but there is a minister who has the seniors portfolio. It's not a full ministry, but at least last year there was. I'm not sure. I believe they're currently
connected. Yeah, I think it's maybe connected with health. There are provinces that do have their own seniors minister.
Well, there's a fair-sized audience watching this. As we wrap this thing up, each of you tell me specifically what one thing could this audience do to help you?
Say if you see something, say something.
Something.
If
Yes.
you see something, say something.
Say something, right. And again, become informed. Know the resources that are available. Learn the signs.
This must be a challenging, I won't say business for you, must be a challenging enterprise for you guys, to be calm and to see this abuse going on. And I suppose sometimes you just feel helpless that you can't do anything, but what you are doing is important. And I'm happy that we can help in some small way with this broadcast. So thank you so much, ladies, for being here.
Thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for having us and letting us
Yes.
share.
Thank you.
So the Association of Community Response Networks for sponsoring this episode. We want to thank them. That's the BC Association of Community Response Networks for supporting this particular episode of this program. Thank you.